Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. First, want to say welcome to all the Sun Devils joining us. We're excited to have you part of our August Spark Your Career event. This event is entitled Find Your Path, and it's specifically for people who are kind of on a complicated career journey or maybe looking to do a career change. We're going to have some resources and information and some alumni panelists that are going to be talking about their career journey. And the different things that they've done in their career to kind of find their own path post-graduation. So I want to start today's session by providing our ASU charter. It's something that is core to being a Sun Devil. It was adopted a few years ago, and it's just something that I love to talk about with Sun Devils, and it's part of the culture. And the fact that ASU is a comprehensive public research university, the part that sticks out to me is the second sentence there, measured not by whom it excludes, by whom it includes and how they succeed. Post-graduation success is part of that. You know, that's and making sure that we stay in touch with Sun Devils, that we are offering services that continue them on through their career path. And that just kind of fills out the rest of that charter, that we're providing public value and that we are responsible for the communities that we serve. And so I just think it's a really important value to address with alumni and when we're talking about career services. So I want to bring in our team that is part of Alumni Career Services here at ASU, and we can do our introductions and talk about our roles, and then we'll dive into today's session. So Sheila, can you go ahead and start?
Sure. Thanks so much, Travis. Hi, everyone. I'm Sheila Shedd, Senior Director for Global Engagement and Corporate Partnerships. In my role, I oversee the Corporate Partnerships and Alumni Engagement team and focus on international positions. So if you're looking for an opportunity to work outside the US, many of the organizations I work with, I can help you connect with. So looking forward to hearing the great panelists today. I'll turn it over to Allison.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Allison Scott. I'm Associate Director for Corporate Partnerships here in the Western region. I live in Seattle, Washington, soaking up the lovely weather here in Seattle during the summer. And I work with alumni and companies here in the West Coast. So supporting our alums in Washington, Oregon, California, Texas, and Colorado. So connecting with companies, that includes online students too. Really nice to meet you all. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Veronica Aguilar. I'm the Associate Director of Alumni Career Services. So happy you're all here with us today. My role, I lead the team that encompasses providing professional development opportunities to our 500,000 plus alumni network all over the world. So that includes, and we'll talk about this later this afternoon, but that includes alumni who are searching for jobs, who want to mentor, and also who want to hire Sun Devils. So thank you all for being here today.
And hello, everybody. My name is Travis Lavik. I'm Associate Director of Corporate Partnerships and Alumni Engagement. My office is here in Tempe, and I'm responsible for building relationships with companies here in Arizona, as well as companies on the East Coast that are looking to hire Sun Devils. And always part of the conversation is not just hiring new graduates, but connecting with our alumni network, connecting with alumni chapters and being part of that, and considering how you bring Sun Devils in for mid and higher level career opportunities. So as I was brainstorming a topic I wanted to address with alumni, I couldn't help but reflect on my own career journey and the different things that I've gone through. And I remember starting college and thinking about what my path was going to look like after I graduated. And it always seemed very linear, right? I came to school, I'd pick my major, I'd graduate in 4 years, I'd land that first job with the company that I love, and then I would just progress in my career from there. I'd get a promotion, maybe find a different opportunity with another company, but it seemed real linear. Myself, I'm a psychology major. I graduated in 2005. I wanted to get into nonprofit, potentially behavioral health, counseling. Those were the tracks that I wanted to go on. What happens is our path looks like this, right? So a lot of times, you know, you come to school, you pick your major, and then you change your major, right? You find that maybe you don't love the subject as much as you want, or it doesn't lead to the type of career you would hope to. Then right? You get another turn at graduation because now you've changed your majors and now it's not a 4-year graduation path, it's a 5 or 6-year graduation path. Actually, part of my story is I graduated in 3 years. I got married at the ripe old age of 20 and wanted to get out of school and make a living. And so I sped through school. So I actually sped up my graduation timeline, and that was the curve that came to me. As I was getting close to graduation with my psychology degree, I actually came to ASU Career Services and I said, hey, I'm getting ready to finish school. First, they were a little surprised to see me because in their book, I was a sophomore when really I was a semester from graduation. But I said, I'm getting ready to graduate. I'd love to get into nonprofit behavioral health. How can you help me? And it was clear that the path I needed to go to make the type of income I wanted to make was more school, which I was not excited about at the time. So that's where, you know, you jump into that first job. And I actually ended up employed with a company that I worked for while I was in school. Again, lots of turns. Second job is always a turn, and then a bunch of question marks, right? And when I think about the current climate we're in, it's full of question marks, right? The economy looks different than it did a year ago. We have a pandemic going on. It's an election year. Who knows what happens as the result of that? And so those are the types of things that can create turns in your road after graduation and even after your first job. And I've actually spoken with lots of alumni and just friends lately that their job has changed so much because of what COVID has done to their position that they're actually unhappy. It's a career field that they've gone into expecting the best, and now that job looks significantly different and they're potentially looking to make a career change. And so that's where we want to be able to make sure that we're providing the information and the tools to be able to help alums find new paths, make their own path, get into a career that they're going to love and progress. So once again, I kind of just want to reflect on my own path. As I mentioned, I graduated in 2005. I took a position with a company called Leading Edge Auto Refinishes. That was the company I worked for part-time while I was in school. They offered me an account manager position, and I progressed from there. And so after graduation, I had spent 7 years, 8 years at a company. I had built my network within one industry, basically. And so as I'm seeing, you know, the things change, the dynamics change in that industry, I'm trying to figure out how I can network outside of myself. Because in order to change jobs, all of my friends, all of my connections were in a singular industry. And I could have found another job with another company, but I would have still been struggling with the dynamics that existed in that industry. We were actually a real successful company. We were the distributor of the year. We had record sales year after year. I was running about 40% of the business, so I had significant responsibility in that company, but it was also a smaller company. It was family owned. I had hit my peak at 29 years old as part of this company. And so this is where my story changed and changes in my road bends. I came back to ASU Career Services as an alum. Told them the same story. Hey, I'm a psychology graduate. I want to get into nonprofit. I've got all this experience with business management and sales, but how do I transition that into nonprofit? And that was where the services that Alumni Career Services offered really helped me start me on a path towards a career I wanted to do. So from there, I actually transitioned all of that experience I had into a role doing career services with a trade school. And I actually then moved into nonprofit and was managing corporate partnerships and basically all of our corporate relations for a nonprofit. And then here I am at ASU managing corporate partnerships and doing career services. So it's been a few-year journey to kind of get into that career path that I really wanted to be in. But it was because of the connections that ASU Career Services helped me make. They provided me with a mentor. I was actually able to sit on a board of directors of a nonprofit and experience that. They helped me tailor my resume to the industry and use words that they were familiar with to be able to get attention and get through the recruiting process. And in my last career change, so the opportunity I took here at ASU, I found that when I made that decision to make a career change, I had to get pretty creative when it came to my resume, because if I was looking for jobs in a for-profit environment, I had to use words like sales and profit and management and P&L. And when I was looking for positions in nonprofit, I had to use words like revenue and fundraising and partnerships, where that doesn't resonate as much in a for-profit environment. So you have to kind of navigate that, and that's where Alumni Career Services can come in and help you. We actually have an expert who's been in the recruiting world, who's going to kind of walk through what a large corporation does when it comes to recruiting, and how they find their candidates and connect, and what people can do to focus on their own personal resume. So Joey, I'd love to bring you in right now and talk about, have you talk about some of the subjects you're going to bring up. We're going to cover optimizing your online profile for career changers. Like I said, later we're going to bring in a panel of alums who have all either gone through career changers or kind of gone on a complicated path to get to the career they're at. And then we're going to review some ASU career services that we can help with our alums with. So Joey, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. And like you said, I want to just share a couple tips and tricks that you can use, things you can apply to your either resume or LinkedIn profile that might help you get more traction. I think it's especially important for career changes or anyone going a non-traditional path, because it really does make a big difference. Just changing a couple words here and there when you are applying to either bigger companies, or if you're even hoping to get looked at by headhunters or recruiters. And if you don't mind clicking through there for me. And go ahead and go to the, I also wanted to share some general LinkedIn tips. I'll add to that. I'm going to try to speak for 10, 15 minutes. Again, just a couple simple things. Find me on LinkedIn too if you have follow-up questions, that sort of thing. Click through one more time for me. So just a little bit of background on myself. As Travis mentioned, been in HR, been in the recruiting space for a while. Started my career at Amazon, owning their global legal recruiting. I was there a few years. It was significantly different, I'll say, back then in 2012 for people that follow that company. Stock was around $200 a share back then. It's gone up a little bit since then. After a few years there, moved over to Microsoft, where I owned our industry corporate recruiting. That's basically anything that's not a recent university grad. So all of our experienced hires there for HR, finance, legal, business development, marketing. After that role, I moved into a university recruiting role where I managed recruiting for North and South America, as well as our international MBA recruiting. In my current role, I lead HR for legal affairs. My confession, I confessed this to Travis the other day, I'm not an ASU alumni. I never attended a school at ASU. I'm an honorary alumni. That picture there is me and my dad at an alumni event. Thank you, Allison, by the way, at an alumni event in Seattle. I'll say he's from, my dad is from the Arizona, from various Arizona areas. I grew up in a really small town, so spent summers growing up coming out here. And in fact, with COVID and finding out I'm going to be remote for the next 2 years or so, I'm actually just moved to Arizona. So that picture on the right was our last sort of big trip before we moved down here. Just got down here a couple weeks ago. Not completely moved in, as you can see from my background, but I'm down in the Arizona area now. I'll say too, I really began to be fascinated with Arizona State when I wrote a white paper at Microsoft. We fell into and I could talk about this for the next hour. I'll keep this to 30 seconds, but wrote a white paper on correlation between your school's ranking and your performance in your career. And basically, we had a lot of performance data that showed there wasn't a strong correlation. They're very much inspired by some work from Malcolm Gladwell in his book, David and Goliath. We had a correlation, though, between a few schools. There were 5 schools that actually had somewhat of a trend at Microsoft. And a couple of them were schools that you'd think of. Some of them were not. But one of the top 4 schools there was ASU. And I just really got fascinated with what's going on at ASU that the folks coming over to Microsoft are doing so well. And we kind of boiled it down to the sort of grit and scrappiness and that sort of thing. So anyways, honorary ASU alum, I'm wearing my ASU shirt for this. Go ahead and click through to the next slide for me. So I want to talk a little bit about SEO. That's overcomplicating it. To simplify that, it's basically, what can you do? How can you change? How can you tweak your resume, your LinkedIn profile to move to the top of a stack. Or, you know, if a recruiter is going out and finding candidates, how do you make sure that your profile is coming up in the top of search results? So a great example of what I mean, I just moved here. I love Mexican food. I'm trying to find Mexican restaurants near me. If I get on Google or Bing, pitch for Bing there, to search, the number two, top 5 searches aren't necessarily the closest restaurants to me. They may not be the best, but for some reason, those are coming up in the top of search results. So there's things you can do to your resume and your LinkedIn profile to get yourself to the top of the stack. And that's what I want to talk about. And Travis, to your point earlier of using the, certain words or different words for the profit versus public sector, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So go ahead and click through for me. So, why is this important? Big companies get a lot of applications, especially right now, the way the economy is. Also, there's a lot of job seekers in the market. I did a quick search on LinkedIn. There's almost 4 million profiles on LinkedIn right now of folks that are saying they're graduating in 2020 or graduated in 2020 just in the United States. That's a lot of job seekers. On top of that, we know that recruiters don't spend a ton of time looking at resumes. You have a very short amount of time to quickly make your resume look like it's a match for a position, or your LinkedIn profile for that matter. Just some fun Microsoft data on this. Microsoft, and again, we're a larger company, we received 2.7 million job applications last year, so last fiscal year. On top of that, we received 30,000 internal job applications. So you're competing with people that are already there when you're applying for jobs. You'll hear a lot that getting a referral is important, and it is. We received 330,000 referrals. This is for about 15,000 open roles. So to give you a sense, there's a lot of people. There's a huge stack. For some of these larger companies, it's impossible to get to the top of the stack. So you need to do everything you can to quickly get your resume up there and get noticed. Go ahead and click through for me. So I wanted to give a real example here. And so I actually pulled a description or a segment of a job description that we have. And I pulled a couple bullet points from actual resumes that were in there against that job description that are very different places of the stack. So this was a job that was posted for around 2 weeks. We had 1,200 applications. The first 2, candidate A and candidate B on there weren't in the top 500, I don't think. We had to go down pretty far to find these. And this is what I wanted to stress is important. So if you look at the basic qualifications there, you have 3 bullet points. Only one of those is substance. The other 2 are really basic qualifiers, meaning that it's just a really quick thing to help weed your resume out. So if you don't have 4 years of experience or a bachelor's degree, it's likely that your resume is not even going to get to a computer. The applicant tracking system is actually able to screen those out, and they're not going to make it. On the substance piece, though, another thing that applicant tracking systems can do is keyword match, and they can stack rank based on keyword match. So in this example, the job description said primary and autonomous responsibility for reviewing, drafting, negotiating the legal terms of a broad range of standard commercial contracts. As you can see down there, I really thought that all 3 of these sentences down here in these 3 different resumes were saying almost the exact same thing. However, the candidate A and candidate B didn't even get a look, didn't even get a response until this position was filled. They could have actually been the best candidates. Candidate A might have been the best person, but just given the volume, they didn't get a chance to get there because of the keywords. So candidate C, they're given that the language there so closely maps to the job description, that one got to the top of the stack. So on your resumes, these small tweaks can be really important, really critical for getting noticed, getting that traction. This is especially important for non-traditional job seekers or folks changing careers because you may not have that experience. What I'd say here, my advice here would be to look at job descriptions, look at LinkedIn profiles of existing employees, and make sure that you're mapping to those things. Tweak your language so that it's language that maps to those. The thing here, there's a caveat in that you'll also want to make sure your LinkedIn profile matches as well. So I would recommend having sort of a skeleton resume or skeleton profile that you can tweak. Amazon, for their positions, for example, uses slightly different language. And so if you used our language at an Amazon post, you might not come to the top of the stack, and vice versa. That being said, there's a lot of data that supports hiring managers and recruiters. Once they put people in sort of the interview process, we'll go validate and go check LinkedIn and other social media profiles. If your LinkedIn profile is significantly different than your resume, you might have an issue. So you don't want to get too specific. You have to strike that right balance. Again, especially important for non-traditional job seekers or career changers. It might be that your resume is completely different than your LinkedIn profile. You'll have to reconcile that to some extent. And go ahead and click through to the next slide for me. So on the resume, to some extent, we're talking about a reactive strategy. And that's once you're in the process. A lot of these bigger companies have full-on recruiting departments, especially I'd say, Fortune 50, Fortune 100 companies. And a big part of their jobs is to go out and proactively find talent before they apply. So a significant amount of the people that we hire at Microsoft have not applied for our roles. We've gone out and found them. The caveat here is we own LinkedIn. I don't want this to sound like a commercial for LinkedIn. We own LinkedIn, but a lot of recruiters do use LinkedIn to do that. There's other things they use as well, but there's things that you can do, very similar things, keyword search, optimizing your profile to come up in those searches, similar to the restaurant example, understanding what recruiters are looking for to make sure that you're coming up in the top of those search results. And go ahead and click through for me. And so I wanted to just show a quick example. This is an actual recruiter dashboard of what a recruiter sees when they're going out and doing these proactive searches. So this is completely screenshotted from my recruiter dashboard. And I just did a quick search for contracts manager, contracts administrator, paralegal. I turned on the filter to only show ASU alums. So that's on the left-hand side there. But just doing that, I had 2,110 candidates appear. And these are, before I click into any profile, I have the chance to click into some of these other things here. So 428 people, that's going to cut my stack significantly smaller, are likely to respond. That means a bunch of different things. It might mean they have an active profile, it's updated, it has like a picture, things like that. That it's telling me don't waste your time sort of on the other ones. There's 289 people out of that have indicated that they're open to new opportunities. That is a button you can click on LinkedIn if you are searching. That being said, you'll get a little warning there saying, hey, we can't control and make sure that your own company can't see it. So debatable whether you want to do that one. But on the right side is where I'd really start. And this is where there's just a really, some small, easy things that you can do to, again, come up in the top of the stack. 53 people out of that 2,100 have company connections, meaning they're connected with someone at my company. That's a really easy way where if I find someone in that stack that's good, I can reach out to who that connection is, see if they can introduce us, see if they can, get them in as an employee referral. 75 of those are past applicants. And the last one, which is, a really simple one, is 78 of those people have engaged with my talent brand. That means 78 people either follow Microsoft, follow a Microsoft leader, or have liked an article or something like that put out by Microsoft. I can tell you that recruiters start there. They start at the smallest piles. So if you're wanting to work in a certain industry or wanting to work for a certain company, go like their pages, go follow their pages. This doesn't tell me that these 78 people also followed 1,000 other companies. It just tells me that they followed my company. So it doesn't hurt you to follow a ton. It does move you to the top of the stack. The other piece, the same thing I said for the resumes, having keywords in there, obviously. I just did this one based on title. But you might have a different title that doesn't map to these. Look at the company, the titling they use, and have that in your profile, or have different variations of that in your profile. You can have a title, but then maybe in your summary or description, you can sneak other titles and other keywords in there, again, to help move you up the stack. And go ahead and click through for me. So those are just quick tips. I wanted to keep it simple. A couple things you can tweak to your resume, a couple things you can tweak to your LinkedIn profile. I wanted to share some quick data just on the importance of having up-to-date LinkedIn profile. If you are applying for a job or trying to work at a much smaller company or a local company, this may not apply. I will say though, again, I think we have some data here. Actually, click through to the next slide for me. 9 out of 10 company recruiters use LinkedIn, and whether that's the fancy LinkedIn recruiter that I showed you or just LinkedIn, it's a really important resource if you are a job seeker, and would stress this both at my time at Microsoft and at Amazon. A significant amount of our hires came from LinkedIn, the ones that weren't referrals, I would say. Go ahead and click through, and we'll go through these ones pretty quick, Travis, because it's just a lot of data points. But I mentioned a lot of managers and recruiters do this too, is they go validate profiles after they've seen resumes. I specifically put profiles in here because they also look at other social media profiles. That's very common and something that we do there. So if you are a job seeker, you might want to just check what's on your Facebook, on your Instagram, if those are public, and make sure that those are somewhat professional. The other thing is, yeah, if you have a photo on there, just quick data, 21 times to get more views. So a lot of times if you are, if you were in that 78 in that big stack, and the recruiter's starting to go through there and you don't have a photo, again, they're going through really, really quick. You might just get skipped over immediately. Go ahead and click through. So here's where I was saying you can sneak in other keywords. And I think this is a critical piece if you are a non-traditional job seeker. It might be one that you're a recent grad or something and you just don't have a ton of professional experience. The summary section is almost like a cover letter where you can sneak some of that in and you can sneak some keywords in there. If your experience isn't on point or it's non-traditional, you're going from one thing to another, again, put in your summary section what you want to do and then leverage those keywords, use those keywords so you are coming up in searches. The other thing you can do here too is, let's say you want to live in New York, but you're in Phoenix now. Put New York as your location. You're going to start appearing in New York for searches. If you know you want to move there anyway, do that. That'll make sure that you're coming up in searches in those areas. That's going to tie you to that area. So that's where you want to strike that balance, but make sure you're doing, small things like that that'll help you come through. And go ahead and click through there for me. So similar to putting a specific location on there, adding your industry is going to make sure you come up in those searches. So I actually have a law degree. I have a legal background. I used my law degree to go into HR. I made sure that my industry was HR rather than legal or law practice because I wanted to come up in those searches when I was a job seeker. It again is making you come to the top of those stacks. And go ahead and click through. So 10 times more likely if you have schools there. Again, every piece of data that you have on there just helps you get more looks. And click through. There's an important point on the next one here, or two more slides here. Perfect. So volunteer experience. So I really liked, and this is my first ASU call. And I wasn't expecting you, Travis, to go through the mission statement, or the charter, I think is what you called that. That's super cool. It very much reminds me of my time at Amazon, where we frequently went through the leadership principles at the beginning of meetings. Amazon is so intense that you would have an empty seat in the room in meetings to represent the customer. They truly live by their mission, truly live by their charter, and having stuff like that in there really matters. At Microsoft, volunteering is huge at the company. It is required to an extent. It is heavily encouraged. In my performance reviews, I'm asked about what I'm doing in the community to volunteer. So for example, at Microsoft, if you were applying for a job and had volunteer experience, this might move you to the top of the stack or get you through to the next round on a screen, whereas maybe it wouldn't other places. So having things on there like volunteer experience really matters. I would say do your research on your company and see if you can incorporate things from their mission, their charter, things from their cultural values that you can put into your LinkedIn profile. Similarly here, skills too, these are at the bottom. You can put in any skills you want. You don't have to have them yet. They could be skills you want to get. But if you remember that cut I did of the LinkedIn recruiter page, recruiters can quickly sort by skills. So if I was looking for someone in HR and I want to look at leadership coaching or things like that, look at the skills. This is again where you can go and look at LinkedIn profiles of existing employees, see what skills they have, see what skills are in the LinkedIn job descriptions and get those in there. So I mentioned location, I mentioned accomplishments. This is especially important if you don't have a ton of work experience, is to put your accomplishments, anything you had in school. I know a big thing right now, and not just at our company, but is leadership experience. I think more and more companies are trying to dive into data of like what experience, what types of profiles translate into high-performing individuals. Having any of that in your profile really does give you a leg up when you're talking about huge, massive searches and keywords. If you hadn't heard that message yet, the keywords is the most critical part. And just a couple more slides and I'll close out here. So this is where I was mentioning, understanding a little bit more about the company culture and job description. A lot of these are already on LinkedIn. You can see their profiles. So there's a one-stop, what's the mission statement? What's the video? where there are open jobs, what are those descriptions, and who are people there. Another thing that people don't realize is a lot of companies will put out hiring content. So we've put out multiple videos on how to ace sort of the Microsoft interview process. I know that our competitors have done similar things. You can basically go understand what it looks like from the beginning to the end, all the way down to specific questions we ask in interviews by going to the LinkedIn page. Super common, especially for the bigger companies there. And click through one more. So follow the companies, follow the influencers at those companies, follow the industries. That's going to, again, help you come up in searches. And as a recruiter, I can't see if you follow, 10,000 companies or just my company. It makes me feel special that you follow my company. So it helps you, percentage wise, get that extra click or get that extra, come into an extra search. And then finally, the last thing is referrals matter. They're a big deal. And when we have a huge stack, our applicant tracking system automatically moves referrals to the top of the stack. The story I like to share here is that I actually interviewed at Microsoft before I got my job at Amazon, and they told me I didn't go to a good enough school to work at Microsoft. The next time I interviewed at Microsoft, I had 5 referrals. They told me I didn't go to a good enough school and have a strong enough background to work at Microsoft, but since I had 5 referrals, they'd interview me anyway. I ended up getting that job. I ended up taking over that program and changing the school policy. But the point being there is that referrals matter. I would have been completely discounted, but for the referrals that I'd had, which all, by the way, were cold LinkedIn outreach that I did. So I didn't know the people. I started out by reaching out saying, hey, I want to learn about your career. I didn't approach it as a job seeker, and that helped me get both my position at Amazon and my position at Microsoft. So referrals are a huge, massive way to do it. Anyways, that's all my slides and my time. Just the couple takeaways here is keywords are super critical. Change those, tailor them to the jobs you want, the companies you want, and you should get a higher probability of getting some traction.
Awesome. Love the insight, Joey. So for our attendees, we're going to do an alumni panel now, but if you do have questions for Joey, feel free to put those in the chat. Once we wrap up our alumni panel, we'll do our best to cycle through some of those questions. But now I want to bring in some of our alums to tell their story as well. Laura, I'd love to have you start and introduce yourself, your background and your company.
Hi, everybody. That was great information. I'm glad I'm not looking for a job right now. That's a lot that it's been a while. So I would definitely, the refresher was great. But so I am the CEO at Big Brothers Big Sisters of Central Arizona. I'm also a proud ASU alum, and I'm excited to share some info. Do you want me to just introduce myself or kind of start in?
That's great.
Okay.
So Latasha, you're up next.
Hi, everyone. I am Latasha Kazi. I am very excited to be here. Again, as Laura said, Joey, you shared some great information. I am the head of recruitment for U-Haul International and a proud ASU alum as well, and also on the ASU Alumni Board.
Awesome. Brandon, you're up next.
Awesome. Well, yeah, Brandon Wiley, founder and CEO of Hound, software company based here in Tempe, so just about 5-6 miles south of ASU. And yeah, I'm also an ASU alum, and happy to be on the panel.
And Joe.
Hi, I'm Joe Ligori. I am a talent acquisition specialist at Tech Systems. Also, like everybody else, proud ASU alum and excited to share my story.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so everybody viewing can bring up the speaker as they're talking. And so we're going to kind of go through some different paths and journeys that you all have taken, and then likewise offer some advice to career changers. So Laura, I'll have you go ahead and start and kind of walk through your career journey right after graduation. What were your expectations? Where were you heading, and where did you end up?
Very interesting journey. And you know what? That's the key word. Life's a journey and your career's a journey, I think. I mean, now that I'm, a little bit farther along in my life journey and career journey, I kind of look back at it and it all makes sense, but it's not a linear path for sure. So I actually went back to ASU a little bit later in my life. So I didn't go right after high school. So then I had worked quite a bit before going to ASU. So I had different jobs, and I had an idea of what I wanted to do, but you know, it wasn't as most even kids coming out of high school and even older. I didn't have a clear path. But when I finally did go to ASU, I majored in journalism, and I wanted to be a sports reporter. I just, as you can see, I think everyone can see Larry, my idol back here, his face. I was going to move it, but God, it just makes me happy seeing that smile. So I thought that I would keep it there. I have an ASU flag next to him, but you can't see that. So that's what I wanted to do. And I was very determined to get through ASU as quickly as possible and not take one class more than I needed. So I was very, very close with my counselor at the time, and stayed really, like literally, I think I graduated with the exact amount of credits I needed. And, but as I went through, I did a lot of internships, and I was listening about, you know, reaching out to people and learning about their career paths. And I did a lot of that. I interned for the Phoenix Suns. They had a magazine that, I don't even think they have it anymore, but, you know, interned there. I interned at a community college, and, you know, I just did a lot of different things, and I reached out to a lot of people. And by the time I graduated, so my degree's in journalism with an emphasis in public relations. It was interesting. So I was in the interview space then, and I was really kind of like, okay, this is what I want to do, but I just wanted a job at that point, obviously in that area. But I interviewed for a nonprofit and I interviewed for a for-profit. Neither one were sports companies at that time. And it was interesting because when you're interviewing, I think I always say, trust your gut, because you know if it kind of is a good fit or not. If, you know, it's not like it's going to be your last job, hopefully, but I think you could tell if it's something that would fit or not. And I could tell that the company that I interviewed, while it was a great company, it was a pretty good salary, but it just didn't speak to me. I just didn't feel that excitement. And for me, it was all about, you know, feeling a passion. I think that when you find, whether, even if it's not your forever career or whatever, if you have a passion for that, if it's a hobby, if it's a cause you support, if you have a passion for it. So the nonprofit actually that I interviewed for was where I'm at now, Big Brothers Big Sisters. But it wasn't where I stayed that whole time, but it definitely spoke to me. And it was I never thought about working in a nonprofit, let alone running a nonprofit. But I really thought, for one, there was a lot more flexibility to do more than what your job requirement was. I mean, most nonprofits, they need you to help in any area. So whatever job you get hired for necessarily isn't where you have to spend every hour of the day. And, you know, so it was definitely more experience, or get more experience, definitely a little bit more flexibility for, even though I was a little bit older college student, I was still in my late 20s. So, you know, I was kind of excited about getting a lot of experience. And so I actually took that job. It was longer hours, less pay, a lot less pay, and a lot of hard work. But I learned so much. And then, but you know what? It's still a journey, because I stayed there. I loved it. Stayed here for 7 years the first time. But then I went off, and I wanted to stay in the sector. I knew I wanted to stay in the sector, but I wanted to I wanted to try something different. So don't pigeonhole yourself in that. And I ended up going out on my own for a little bit, for 4 years. And that was kind of fun, because I ended up working with clients of all different business types. I mean, ASU was a client of mine. Blue Cross Blue Shield was a client of mine. A lot of nonprofits were a client of mine. So I got to experience a little bit of all that I really loved, to find out really where I felt I would best fit. And moving on quickly, because I know we have a lot of panelists, I ended up working for ASU. They hired me full time, but then Big Brothers Big Sisters, the CEO at the time reached out to me, and this wasn't who I worked for when I was back working for them before. And he said, I really want you to head up my marketing team, my marketing and development. Well, I was not a development person, but you know what I said? I can do that. And so I went back and I ran that department for 18 months until the board reached out to me and asked me to apply for the CEO job, which I said, I definitely don't want to do that. That is not my goal. But then as I reached out to mentors and the board and my friends, and you know what, it was mostly fear, thinking I don't have all that experience. But you know what, I kind of did, but it came from all different areas. And now I've been CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters for 8 years, and it's just, I don't know if I'll be here till I retire, because I want someone else to get the fun. But you know what, my journey's not over, and give me a couple of years, and I might just take what I learned and put it somewhere else. So I guess what I would take away from this is, I think a career is a journey, and think about it like that, and don't ever pigeonhole yourself.
Awesome. Thanks, Laura. Joe, I'd love to hear your story. I know some of yours is those transitions while you were in school and kind of bouncing around too.
Sorry, did you say me?
Yeah, Joe.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, well, I definitely wasn't somebody who graduated college knowing what I wanted to do. I had an idea in mind. So my degree is in interdisciplinary studies. When I went to ASU, I kind of wanted a general business degree, but I was not 100% sure where I wanted to go. I ended up working at and interning for a really large law firm while I was attending ASU, and that kind of sparked my interest in the legal field. And so after I graduated from college, I decided to start working in the legal field, and that made me think, maybe I want to go back to school. Maybe I want to be a lawyer. Maybe I want to go to law school. But obviously that is a really big time and monetary commitment. And so I started talking to different lawyers and figuring out, did they like their career? What did they like? What did they not like? And came to find out that the majority of them did not like what they did. They were very discouraging. Most of them did not recommend going to law school. And so that kind of made me rethink my plan. I knew I wanted to continue my education. And so I ended up pursuing and starting a master's of legal studies and switching my career path a little bit. I started working in higher education during that time, but my plan was I want to go more into an HR career path. And I thought that the legal background would help a little bit with that. So, so that's where I was. Fast forward maybe a year or two, still working on my master's. Somehow recruitment recruitment fell into my lap. I had a friend that worked at a company, and she decided she wanted to get out of that area and recommended that I interview for the position. So I started in university recruiting 8 years ago, and was at that company for about 2 years. And then I had a mutual connection at LinkedIn, a mutual connection at Tech Systems through LinkedIn, but I ended up meeting her at a career fair. And she was like, hey, do you ever want to interview for Tech Systems? And I said, not really, but why not? And here I am. I've been with Tech Systems for 5.5 years. Definitely did not ever necessarily see myself in talent acquisition. And like I had said, I originally thought my career path would lead more to a traditional HR side of things, but got into talent acquisition, and I love what I do. And so I don't think I would change it. But again, had you asked me, I don't even know, 12 years ago when I graduated from ASU, if I would be in talent acquisition, I probably would have said absolutely not. I think for me, what I've discovered is that your connections kind of lead you to your next career path. Doing your research, talking to mentors, talking to people really helps you figure out what you want to do and then where your career takes you next. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. Latasha, I'd love to have you weigh in.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. So for me, I actually started my career when I was in high school. So I was fortunate to be in the School to Careers program, where a few students were selected to go work for a very large organization, which is Charles Schwab. Schwab was going to hire, a few students to be stockbrokers and then one person to be in people services. I did not want to be a stockbroker. So I took the option of people services, which actually translates to HR, but back then I was 16, I didn't really know that. So I actually worked at Schwab, and it was a great opportunity and it was so good that by the time I graduated from high school, I was a Schwab employee. So I ended up working full-time and going to ASU full-time. But pre-Schwab coming into my life, I had the plan that I was going to be a journalism major. So when I started ASU, I was a journalism major, and I was dead set on being a co-anchor on Good Morning America. So that was my goal. That is exactly what I was going to do. However, my career was elevating very quickly. School was going great. And then I worked with my counselor at ASU and realized I would have to be there for 5 years in order to complete a degree in journalism. And that was not an option for me in my mind, because it had to be over in 4 years because I was already working and had a career. And so at that point, I changed my major, which was the Bachelor's of Interdisciplinary Studies, and focused on communications and family studies. And so I really pivoted my career by doing, full-time ASU, full-time in my career, and really stayed there until after undergraduate at Charles Schwab. And because of those Schwab connections and my network, I was then able to get my next couple of opportunities. And so I left Schwab after almost 8 years there. And went to another large financial institution, leading recruiting efforts at a very young age, handling a lot of great things in terms of human resources. It was actually my old boss that left Schwab that took me with her to Wells Fargo. And then when I left Wells after a few years, I spent almost 12 years at USAA. Where I had a role where I was actually able to do multiple things. It was a role that I was almost, if you will, created as I went along, meaning that I was able to do human resources work as well as philanthropic and community work, so employment branding. So while I was at USAA, I spent a lot of time building my internal network. When you build your internal network and you as well perform in your job, individuals want to take you with them, if you will, as they grow and as they progress. Which led me to being able to lead the region here in Arizona for USAA for almost 5,500 employees. And so truly an amazing opportunity and an amazing experience. Again, through my network at Schwab is why I was even there in the first place. And then also through my network, once I left USAA and started to lead recruiting here at U-Haul, it was all about a connection that I had through my network that asked me to lead the recruitment efforts here. So I know we are getting close to time, but if I leave you with anything, it is truly, do not forget to build your network, both internal to your organization, whatever organization you are working at, and as well with the community. Please build your network, not only for yourself, but for others around you, because I will tell you, Joey said it earlier, we get over 50% of our hires through network and employee referrals. So they always are at the top of the list. If there is someone in my network that says that you're a great candidate, I will definitely make sure you get in the interview process. So please, I cannot stress enough the importance of you building your network.
Awesome. Thanks, Latasha. Brandon, you're up. I know you and I have been around for some of our own turns in our own careers, so I love hearing your story, and I'd love for you to share it right now.
Yeah, certainly. So, if I had just stuck with what I was doing when I was young, when I was like a kid, I probably would have had a much straighter path. I started a couple of small, little, kid businesses in elementary school, middle school, and high school. Messed around with software programming and stuff at that time. But then I decided I was going to do something different. So I went to ASU for English and linguistics. It was the first year, actually. The linguistics whole program, it just kicked off when when I was there, because I wanted to go to a jungle and learn a new language and create a documented language from something that hadn't been documented before. That was like what I was going to do. And then the girl that I was dating said, "There's no way at all that I'm going to a jungle if we want to stay together." So I decided to can that whole idea coming out of college, marry her, and because she was a better choice in the jungle, and then ultimately because I didn't have a second option, I just did the first thing that you do with an English degree coming out of college, is I went and became a teacher. So I taught for like a year. And very quickly realized that I just couldn't do that. It was too repetitive for me, and so that started a whole what is now a 20-year journey of just weaving and navigating different opportunities, seeking out the different things that I wanted to do. Ultimately, but for about the last 15 years, has been focused around technology and running companies or running divisions of companies, and focused on supporting and helping small businesses succeed. And that's where my passion is. That's where I landed. But it was a wild journey, and I think there were two things that were valuable during that circuitous route. I mean, I was in nonprofit, I was in retail, I was in I've worked at IT as an IT manager for a plumbing wholesale and supply company. Then I started my own company, and I worked for a healthcare company, staffing company, as their IT and marketing CIO and CMO, and so. Been a very wide variety until then I moved my family to Silicon Valley to work in software as to get the software Silicon Valley startup experience, so then I could come back to Tempe and then start my own software as a service company. So again, long path, but the two things that were critical for me. One, as has been said multiple times, building that network since my very first job, which was the teaching job. I mean, even that was an introduction through my father at the time, because that's your network when you're still in just college, just like your parents and your friends. And I didn't have a network outside of that. But beyond that, I haven't formally interviewed for, or I haven't formally applied for a job since. It's always been through introductions, through networking. Granted, I've had to go in and nail the interview and have the resume and everything else, but never had to formally apply through any sort of process. It's always through networking. The second one is to never stop learning. So finding opportunities to continually feed yourself, leverage every job that you're doing, glean and scoop up and scrape up as much as you possibly can from each of those opportunities. Just suck and bleed that company dry of all the knowledge and wisdom that they can give you. Find great mentors within that company and outside of those companies, and suck as much information as you can, and then use that to apply it to the next thing that you're doing. So those are, if I could, those are the two things that have been helpful for me, at least in the last 20 years post ASU. 18 years.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Brandon. And your story is pretty unique, because for some career changers, that means a path into entrepreneurship, which is pretty exciting and cool. And just thinking about the skills that you develop from your previous companies and building that out into something that you can run on your own. So I think we've had a couple questions come in. I'm gonna not worry about my questions because we're coming up on time. I want to make sure we address some of the attendees. So one of the questions that just came in from Braxton, how frequently do you keep up in touch with your network? You don't want to be somebody that's reaching out all the time or just when you're in need of something. So what's a good cadence to that? And Brandon, you touched on that quite a bit, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a great book. Well, the title alone solves for it, but if you want to read the book, you can. But great book by Keith Ferrazzi called Never Be Alone. And that's absolutely true. So do what you can to, I mean, it's different in the COVID situation right now, but there's never a lunch where I'm a lunch, or if there's a breakfast or multiple coffees or happy hours, that I'm constantly meeting with people, networking and building and reinforcing that network. So truly take that to heart and find ways to connect with your network. There are going to be times though where you may not have connected with somebody for a year and you just have to reach out, or 2 years, and you just got to reach out and just say, hey, I'm being honest here. we haven't connected in a little while. I hope you're doing well. I'd love to catch up, but I really need this. I could really use this introduction. Most people are more than willing to facilitate that, especially if they know you're willing to do that for them too, and open up your network to them.
Awesome. Any of our other panelists have any insight?
The only other thing that I would add to that is I know the question said it doesn't want to be as if you're reaching out only if you want something. Make sure that you're not only reaching out only when you want something. So just making sure that you are just doing check-ins as well. So perhaps it's just an email. It doesn't necessarily have to be a coffee, but perhaps you're just checking in to see how those individuals are doing. And also don't pass up on the time right now. I know we are in COVID and I know everything is on Zoom, but actually people have a little bit more time available on their calendar because they aren't driving to coffees. They're not driving to lunches or to events. So I would definitely leverage this time and just reach out to people to see if they have time for a 10, 15-minute Zoom meeting just to connect.
And sorry, if I could just add one more thing. There's another really good book that you should read cover to cover. It is actually solid. It's called The Go-Giver. And there's the 5 laws of value. I actually printed them out and keep them on my desk. 5 laws of value. And it's about always giving back to your network. So when you do reach out, find ways to support and give back to your network, because then it's never a matter of, just reaching out and feeling like you're asking for something, because oftentimes then those opportunities will come up and present themselves if you're actively giving into that network.
Awesome, appreciate it. We had another question come in via the Q&A. The question was essentially addresses at the top of resume. If you're receiving a resume that maybe doesn't have a local address, is that something you're going to push aside, or is it there's an understanding that because they're applying for the position that they're accepting that it's located where it is?
I don't know if you're addressing that to me, but I can answer that. I would say it depends. It depends on, like at our company, it depends on if we have relocation budget for that position. So for a lot of our entry-level positions, it might be something the team would consider. For most of our experienced positions, meaning someone that has like 4 or 5 years of experience or more, it wouldn't be a factor at all.
Awesome. Latasha, Joe, echo that?
Yeah, I would definitely exactly the same. I mean, I think it just depends on the position, the leveling, and if a relocation is available or not. But I will say that if you have the opportunity to add notes in the applicant tracking system, which sometimes you do, there's sometimes an open box text, you could probably put in there that you are relocating to the area, if you will, so that individuals know that you are going to be in Tempe or wherever it is the job is listed.
Awesome. Appreciate it. We're running up against time, so I want to make sure that we have a few minutes to just talk about what ASU can do. So V, I'm going to have you jump in here. I'm going to share my screen again, and we're just going to talk briefly about ASU Alumni Career Services.
Perfect. Thanks, Travis. So these resources that we'll be sharing in a follow-up email as well with links for you to utilize. At Alumni Career Services, no matter how many years ago you graduated, you can receive free career services for life in our office, which is absolutely fantastic. And we're actually one of the few universities in the country to do this. So we provide one-on-one support and services for our alumni. Virtual advising is available currently right now. You're able to build your network, which is something that was reiterated over and over again today. Networking needs to be a little bit redefined right now, which is why the ASU Mentor Network is an incredible virtual platform for alumni, students, staff, faculty, and community members to join. And also, we really encourage our alumni to hire Sun Devils, right? Because they shouldn't hire anywhere else. I think Joey agrees. Earlier he mentioned how impressive our ASU students and alumni are. And finally, as I mentioned, we do have incredible virtual events, hopefully fingers crossed soon to be in person, that provide professional development opportunities to bring alumni together. So as I mentioned, these links will be sent out in a follow-up email for you to continue joining our network and being a part of the ASU community.
Awesome, appreciate it, V. So again, we're running at time, but know that ASU is here to help any alumni who are on a non-traditional path or a career changer. We can help you figure out how to translate your skills into a role that you're looking for. If we didn't answer your question live, we will do our best to answer it via email. We will also do a follow-up to all of our attendees this afternoon. Just a real quick site on ASU Mentor Network. We definitely encourage any, as an alum, you actually have the ability to act as a mentor or a mentee. So it is a great place to make connections with fellow Sun Devils and learn about career opportunities, make connections, and connect with people who are in those industries. Kind of like Joey was mentioning, that it's a reach out you can do, not necessarily looking for a position, but to really find more about that industry, what's expected of individuals working in that role, and those kinds of details. We do have nearly 5,000 faculty, alumni, and professionals on there, so it is a pretty robust network to connect with, and you can connect again off of industry or your goals. So this is my contact information. Feel free to email me directly, and I will work on facilitating, answering questions either with one of our panelists or with somebody from Alumni Career Services. We'll also send out some of the resources that we've presented here, as well as a recording of this video. So again, we appreciate all of you joining us and being part of our Spark Your Career. We hope to see you next month. Go Sun Devils.